You in over there, Jeff?
Yeah. It's gone in, Rhino.
Come on, father and son, man.
I'll race you to the top.
Don't rush me.
Sorry.
Watch the language, Rhino.
I have to, I know.
Don't swear in my film, you. Me. 'Tis time the fat lady loosened her vocal cords.
As a way of going to sea for the non-boat owner, the charter boat system of the British Isles is without doubt the best option. It offers major advantages, not least safety, economy, and of course utilises the skills of skippers and crews who guide pleasure anglers for a living on a regular basis.
Probably the fish are getting a little bit bigger because the tide's running.
It's reasonable to say that the charter boat fishing game can be divided into 4 basic areas. Uptide fishing takes place in relatively shallow waters and major river estuaries such as the Thames and the Severn.
Oh, well done, Bob.
South Coast English channel fishing, where the species may not always be as large as West Country wreck specimens, but the fish can sometimes be more prolific and varied.
When there's more bass about, the prices drop.
Right.
So at the beginning
The cod trips of the North Country, where the water temperature is generally lower and therefore does not support the warmer water species, and of course the South West, famous for its wreck fishing, sharking and giant conger.
That's a good 40, isn't it?
No, that's a 50 pound.
We gone 50?
Yeah.
I reckon so.
Scotland has a unique species by way of the giant Scottish skate.
I want to touch those teeth. You've got this fish? I'm not going in, but I want to feel.
They're not actually sharp.
No. It's the
But a few lines of latitude south lies the conger capital of the last millennium, the sites where thousands of ships were sunk through 2 world wars, the port that regularly saw the navies of Nelson and Drake, the Eddystone Lighthouse, Mayflower Steps, the place that really once was the top charter port in the country, my home harbour, the naval town of Plymouth. Sadly for all, including us old-timers who learnt our angling skills last century, the charter fleet of Plymouth is a very diminished affair. So much so that for this programme I've asked a very skilled skipper and friend to bring his boat around from Looe in Cornwall for the angling we're going to attempt to film today. I've sourced Plymouth for quite a few fishing videos and television programmes in my time. I choose it still now as best an option as I can manage in a world where we can no longer guarantee a few fish for the camera. Nobody wants to blank on any day, but a fishing video without a few specimens popping over the side for a brief chat or a visit to the market makes for a bit of a boring programme. So viewers will forgive, I hope, my efforts at hanging on to this one security blanket. I've got friends on board today. None are pro anglers, all are just keen fishermen. Well, Jeff owns a tackle shop, but that's because of his love of angling. he's one person I know who fulfilled a lifetime dream by actually buying the shop he bought his tackle from as a kid just a few years ago. And then some. He's not been wrecking and reefing for something like 15 years, and this is the pioneering trip for his lad, 14-year-old Ryan, who's turning himself into a rather skilled young angler, built on a confidence bred from success and an amazing lucky streak. More of that will be revealed later. Warren and Eddie are friends who regularly inshore boatfish around the coast from Minehead to Bristol. They've been out Nile perch fishing with me in Egypt, but basically fish UK coastal waters. Those of you who have watched my changing weights and weight over the years will have noticed the changing hair length of my oldest angling partner, and I mean that in terms of the years we fished together. As my weight went up, and thankfully back down again, Roger's hair faded further, but didn't make a return. His hair has been as consistent as the charter boat fishing we've shared. Both have depleted on a steady basis over the last quarter of a century. Today, instead of hurtling over the horizon looking for elusive huge conger in distant wrecks, we're going for a more relaxed day of general fishing. Did I say relaxed? One look at the frisky 4 gusting 5 and we know before we're even out that we're going to be banged around a bit. As our backs and joints take more of the strain, I worry about the new technology of digital cameras and their less robust characters, and wonder who will retire the quickest to the relative comfort and dryness of the wheelhouse. There are 4 basic games we're going to play today. Firstly, we're going to fish for the bait, on this occasion mackerel, as it is without doubt the best offering for most of the species we're trying to find. Next we'll have a go at lure fishing for Pollack on long flowing traces over a wide reef on the drift, winding in and motoring back up the tide and wind equation when we slip away from the fishing area. Thirdly, we'll be bottom fishing for Ling by drifting with ledger rigs and fresh baits. And we'll end the day anchored, hopefully if we can in these conditions, over a good inshore wreck and try for a few conger. Firstly though, we need the bait, and that is not as easy as it once was. For the first time ever, I've brought a box of squid and a few packs of frozen ammo products, just in case, because supply of mackerel has been varied this week. 2 days ago, you couldn't get through them, and then, for no reason at all that was obvious, they all disappeared yesterday, causing havoc for the shark fishing trips. Hence, the just-in-case packets stored in the fish box. A mackerel bash is a great way to start the day. As well as being the best bait fish for southern waters, they're also a great eater. But even for this pioneering fish for most young would-be boat anglers, conservation is an important factor, and we'll only catch an amount that we think we'll need for an enthusiastic party, and then some for freezers and frying pans. We'll stop at a sensible time. Just off Plymouth, there's a fantastic drop-off, which has always been known originally as the drop-off. Just a few miles off Rame Head, it's been the first halt for most of the Plymouth charter boats for generations, and remains so today. It's the first real clue you get as to how conditions are out in the volatile channel as you bounce merrily away, watching in awe the size of British warships, purposefully going about their exercises and testing the trainee modern sailors who arrive at Plymouth, lily-white, crew-cut, and experiencing their first contact with the Technicolor yawn. I often wonder what they think when they look down from their enormous iron towns boasting serious hardware and see a half-dozen or so vulnerable-looking little fisher people bouncing around like corks in a jacuzzi in the pursuit of entertainment and sport. But apart from admiring the solidity of their potential fishing platforms, we, the little people below, do have one major advantage. When we've had enough, and it's time for coffee or beer, we weigh anchor and steam for the security of Plymouth Sound, and they head valiantly to far more dangerous waters in order to defend this tiny but important island from its enemies and waiting sharks. The technique for mackerel bashing is an easy one. Simply attach 6 lures of your favourite or the locally recommended attractor to a £20 line and swivel a weight onto the bottom. A multiplier reel is much easier, as fixed spools don't work well for lowering rigs into water. A fixed spool is primarily a casting and retrieving reel. The lures are lowered into the sea with a bit of a splash to fill the feathers, if you're using them, with oxygen bubbles, which increases attractivity. By lowering at a reasonable pace and counting the seconds, if the skipper has got you over a good place, it won't be long until you've established at what depth the fish are shoaling, by a member of said shoal finding your flashing lure irresistible and taking a swipe, at which time he usually finds a 4-0 mustad has impeded his progress. At this stage, you crank him to the top and you have your first bait fish of the day. When you've got confident at the technique, you can risk leaving the presentation down there and jigging a bit more in order to load a couple more fish on.
Both these mackerel taking on the smaller design.
But don't get complacent. Keep firm contact with the fish, or those you've captured will take advantage of the lack of pressure and usually escape unless particularly well hooked. Experience, trial and error, will establish for you a pattern and method that best suits you. The one tip I can pass on from my own errors is that I've always had a tendency to lower the rig too fast, often shooting past shallow shoaling fish and missing the chances that others were taking. When mackerel are in a feeding frenzy, you could lower your foot over the side, figuratively speaking, and catch them, but a slower approach when shoals are shy can increase your catch rate, as it did mine when I'd finally worked out why Roger always caught more than me.
Can't beat a good mackerel bash. And today that was all right. We've got half a box of fish which we'll use for bait. Calculating the number so we don't take more than we need. But what we might do on the way back in tonight, if conditions are good, is just try and slay a few more for tea time. Blowing a bit of a hoolie. First drops of the day. Pattern at the moment of the boat is quite simple. Everyone else is having a bash at Pollack with artificial lures. This means they're trying to get major predatory species on flowing trace systems. I've taken a gamble and I've dropped a single running ledger down there with bronze hook and a congering rig with a big fat mackerel on the end. So I'm the only one actually bottom fishing with bait. But by doing that, we've covered the odds. Now, what does all of that mean in any shape or form? No sweats, we'll run through the different aspects later. This is probably the easiest and simplest technique for going fishing, because there is less for me to get tangled up and less for me to lose control of. All the other guys are doing things a bit more techie and a bit more complicated. But at least we're having a general spread by this technique. And then if I make contact with bottom feeding fish and using bait, then they can change over and come that way as well. What I've actually got on here and what I'm up to at the moment is a single presentation to give you some idea of where we are. We're about 15 miles or so out of Plymouth. We're over a bit of rough ground that's particularly Pollack friendly, and that's generally what we're trying for at the moment. What I'm looking for, hopefully, is an opportunity fish like a Ling or a Conger to see if they're on the game in this environment. Depth of the water, about 180 feet. The wind, about a 4, frisky I would call it today, making life just a little bit more unstable and a little less pleasant than would be ideal. But by locking myself onto the side of the boat, by managing to get myself upwind of it as it were, all my rigs and gear are heading away and less likely to tangle with them. The rods on the other side of the boat are all probably coming underneath and fishing generally underneath the boat as we speak, and I've put on a bigger weight to try and drop down sharper, but I'm probably in effect somewhere about 15 yards away from the boat down the bottom there now. I haven't had a single nibble in any shape or form. I haven't even got pouting or anything like that, having a little grab. So I may bottle out in a while and have a go and see what they're doing with the pollock fishing, which is good fun, a little bit more complicated, and we'll explain all about it shortly. While it's blowing a hoolie straight down the microphone, we might as well have a quick look at the tools we need for the job. There's two areas of this entire situation that we need to consider. What's going on here and what's going on 180 feet below. And while I gabble through it, I might as well carry on fishing and see what's going on. At the top end, because I'm hopefully looking for a big fat conger, or at least some decent sized ling, I'm actually running a straight through 50-pound class range of tackle. What that basically gives me is a good solid rod principle that can take a lot of beef if I get something decent on the end of the line. So I'm running a straight through 50 Sea Line S Daiwa boat rod, and this is matched with one of my all-time favourite reels. This is the SL 450H. When we wander around the boat later with the camera, we'll hopefully find that other guys are using different bits of tackle and different manufacturers. But if you cut me in half, you'd probably find all the fat little rings that went through my system all said Daiwa, 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 because I've seasoned myself with this equipment for, unfortunately, about 25 years now. The main line, I'm a bit of a traditionalist with this as well. This particular main line is a 50-pound class. It's an American manufactured line called Mason. This particular brand is Sea Tamer, or it's Fish Tamer, I can't remember which. But what that gives me is 180 feet of elasticated system that I have a good control over if I get the great big beastie that I'm looking for. What we'll do in a while, when I have to reel in and do a bait change, we'll have a look at what is happening at the other end from a gear point of view. But in the meantime, it'd probably do no harm to actually think about what's happening down there at the moment. Up here, we're blowing around, rods are needing to be lowered and raised under control. Yo! Fishery patrol going by. Because we want to keep all the gear sitting down there regardless of what is happening up here. Now, some kind of boring and they seem a bit too tidy for my liking, but they do give you an idea. Some stats that I should throw your way. Number one, 95% of the fish in British waters are actually on the bottom. They are bottom feeders. So therefore, that tells us there's little point in having our baits and presentations waltzing around 10 or 15 feet above the bottom. Hey! That is a beaut. Take your fish, Ryan. Let's have a quick trophy shot. Spawny lad, decent first fish of his day. I think his dad's already told him he's not coming again. Go and have a look at that one. And while I'm messing around with my ledgers and bits on the bottom and Ryan's having a pollock on that side, Warren's clocked a pollock on this side. Only he just lost it, which is a bit of a shame. So we may go over and net it actually, because its swim bladder's blown, it's on the surface. And the only reason he lost it is because I asked him to hang on a minute while I burbled into the piece. So we'll just belt off over there and pick that fish up. Okay, a second safely netted pollock. Smaller one, about £5, but at least it's a start. And I, with complete loyalty, of course, to bottom-feeding ledgering presentation, will, if anyone else catches a pollock, immediately abandon this 50-pound rig and swap over to what they're doing. We did, in all fairness, come to this mark as the first mark under these conditions in order to drift fish for pollock. As I warned earlier, I'm the pillock who's having a go at trying something different just to see what else is down there. But I do fancy myself a bash on a pollock. The beauty of it, the beauty of Pollachius is in fact he's a major predatory pursuit fish for British waters. You've got the pollock, you've got the bass. It'd be nice to see one of those in late double figures. I have been advised by my editor of Total Sea Fishing that if anyone manages to come up with a very good late doubles pollock, then that could be the fish for next month's Total Sea Fishing front cover. So I think I might well change tactics and have a go for one of them myself. At that point, we can, of course, explain through and talk about what we're doing. So, this is suspense moment, because 15 seconds from now, I'm either still going to be standing here holding one of these, or you will, in fact, find me fishing with one of these. because I bottled out and decided to have a good go at the Pollacks. On a more serious note, everything's scaled down. This is a lovely 12 to 30 pound class boat rod with a good bendy tip, matched with an SL50, one of my favourite all-time reels. 180 feet down, playing a completely different game with a 12-foot trace that needs to take a little bit of effort, a tiny bit of experience, and an awful lot of control. Off the bottom again, Warren.
Yeah, not far.
On the retrieve.
Yeah.
Trying to get the timing right here. As Warren comes up, I'm going back down. Fish nearly up. Where are we? Try and keep it away from my line. And another fine reef pollock. Good condition early summer fish. Noticeably caught on a black lure. That's something we'll talk about in a while. Running deep water, probably pitch black down there. Why are we using black lures? Black lures, eh? Why does a black lure work in the dark? Simply the answer is, I don't know. I might ask the skipper later, but I've caught more pollock probably on black Eddystone lures than any other one. And that's all it actually is down there. This tiny little bit of flappy rubber with a finely designed tail and a hook, so that when it's coming through the water, the fish in pursuit comes along behind at whatever pace you may be reeling it in, by the way. Grab, hook, that's the action, that's the point of the action. Sometimes, just to cheat, we'll pop a tiny bit of worm on there just to create a bit of niff, but I think it's more to do with the movement through the water that actually makes the thing hit. Like the opportunity for it to work for me today, really, as well. Because I think nearly everyone but me and Roger, the old timers for Plymouth, have had pollock so far. Fat lady sings, know what I mean? Alton Towers time. In comes another nice little pollock, but they are getting smaller. They are, however, extremely good quality fish. Can't complain about that. Time for another statistic. 95% of fish caught are actually caught by 5% of anglers. That's a stat worth thinking about. Regrettably, I think I'm one of the other way round brigade, you know, the 95% that don't catch and only catch 5% of the fish, etc, etc. In my own defence, it is actually a little harder to talk rubbish down a camera while trying to fish effectively for pollock. Plenty of time. It's a long day ahead. Also, though, interesting to see is that us who are using smaller lures are catching smaller pollock. Ryan was using a big lure and caught himself a very nice 9, just under the 10 pound. So I might scale up in a while without telling people. We looked at this bit just now, but I didn't explain that actually attached to this is over 12 feet of line. So what you've got is a trace that just goes on and on and on and on. At the 6 foot mark, I'm actually fishing a bit shorter, about 5 foot. There's a swivel which helps reduce the amount of twist, and then there's another 5 foot plus of line that goes on and on and on, all the way up to a short boom. So the thing's sticking out like that, and on the end, on this pace of tide, is an 8 ounce length of weight, an 8 ounce weight to help me drop it. Why the 12-foot length of trace, I hear you and myself asking. The original reason was based on the fact that this lead coming through the water left a trail of oxygen bubbles, which was believed to disturb the fish. Not so sure about that with modern techniques. By using the 12-foot trace, it gave us a presentation and something that we could lure the fish with that kept away from what was considered to be a derogatory aspect of the angling, and left this bit just pooting along behind. It's a system that kind of, when I ask around and say, why do we do it? Most of us go, dunno, we've just always done it that way. It's always been effective. But of course, these days, we use oxygen, we use turbulence, we use disturbance in the water to catch major predatory pursuit fish, like marlin or whatever, in foreign waters. But the principle's exactly the same here. What you do have to watch when you're working a trace of 12 to 16 feet, which is way over, of course, the length of the rod that you're using, is that you lower it under control rather than just dropping quickly to the bottom. The basic reason behind that being is that that stops that great long piece of nylon wrapping back up round your main line as it goes down. So what you're basically hoping to do is lower everything like that, the weight hits the bottom, this will gradually then drop down, leaving that lovely little lure sitting there to do its job. But that is not the end of the story. After everything's settled down there, what you then do is retrieve slowly, consistently, so that you're pulling this through the water and teasing any pursuit fish that may be within range. And the thing to really watch out for with this game is it really isn't over until the fat lady sings. A pollock in calm conditions can very well come all the way to the surface and take that lure about 2 or 3 feet from the side of the boat. So never give up with it, never get complacent, keep going, keep working, changing the pace, different adjustments, and with a bit of luck you'll have a major and beautiful British species fish for your collection. Deep hook in or not? Yeah. Greedy fish. Fine pair of pollock. Nice to see us getting slayed by the 14-year-old angler of the future. Now going to try and practice what I am attempting to preach and lower this lot under the control. I think maybe it's time for me to catch myself the wonderful Pollachius pollachius. Okay, well, I've just hit the bottom for the last drift of this particular section on pollock fishing. It's actually my last chance to try and get one in. Everyone else has had a pollock, except me and Jeff, I think, on the other side of the boat. But we're going to move away from this area very shortly and go reef fishing and back to the ledgering techniques, where I could talk more because you have to concentrate less. However, it's a good time to look quickly at level wind along with the other techniques that you need to learn. The line is, of course, coming in the whole of the time. While I'm talking, I'm counting the amount of turns, and then I know how far things are off at the bottom. But by dropping my thumb over the line and just working quietly backwards and forwards, I then level wind everything onto the reel. It reduces the risks of the monofilament being snagged on itself, squashed or damaged in any way, and puts everything far more neatly under my control. I've come up there about 80 feet, no action. I remember saying to you, do keep going sometimes all the way to the top, but I'm going back down again because most of these pollocks today have been taken very close to the bottom at the start of the retrieve. Once again, lowering the whole thing under control, waiting until I feel the very firm thump as weight hits rock, or the squidgy thump as it hits a bit of mud, shale, sand, whatever's down there, don't really know on this particular mark, and then start the whole process again. Time moves ever onwards. Ours by about 15 minutes, yours by special effect. We've actually moved about 3 miles and we're onto a very nice, slightly offshore reef in about 35 fathoms of water. The target species is the ever wonderful Ling, a member of the cod family, but a 99% bottom feeder. So we're away for the Pollack techniques, we're still on the drift, which gives us the opportunity to cover more ground on a particularly impressive feature where Ling might be living, we hope. It's a good mark actually, this one. Techniques also change. I'm back to the 50-pound class tackle and we are presenting a sliding ledger system on the bottom. This is the grub, this is what we're doing down there. It's a fillet of fresh mackerel caught earlier. Freshest of bait is always the best, on an 8/0 bronze hook, tied at the top with a bit of elasticated cotton just to keep its security. So that is the dinner that's being offered. On this occasion, I'm using a trace 2 foot long of wire, which is good for abrasion and it just gives me a more solid contact, etc. Very Conger resistant as well. Straight back to the main line, but on this occasion, this part is where the sliding ledger comes into effect. It's a rather nice boom made by, it's a rather nice sliding weight ledger by Mustad, for which I can easily change any option of weight. At the moment, I'm going for an 8 to 10 ounce weight to try and hold bottom. So that's it. I'm just going to lower the whole lot under control down to the bottom of this 180, 190 foot piece of water into some stony ground and see if I can come up with one of my favourite species in British waters, the Ling. Down we go. Pursued as always by the waiting seagulls. Fingers on the reel, just to keep a nice steady pace. It's at this stage, while lowering under control, that I start to build up what I call my bottom picture. And that's not a view of my own rear end. It's what might actually be going on down there with what I'm sending down. Reminding you, it is of course dark. Therefore, we're using the fresh bait, we're using an oily bait, which mackerel is, to create a scent trail, which will work up tide away from what I'm trying to present. Bang, we hit bottom rather firmly. I know I'm on rock. I'm now just going to tighten my clutch a little bit and have a feel and find out what's going on down there. Because, because of the movement of the boat on a windy day, I'm forever compensating for the action of the boat with the rod, because it's no good if it's banging around down there, and if the shape of the rocks like this could conceivably end up just waltzing around with a bait waving around 10 feet above the bottom. So always in touch, never complacent, just refined it. Bit squidgy down there at the moment, either in a hole or on the bottom. You got a fish there, Warren? He believes so. He may have one. And my turn to get it down there and see what happens. All the fish coming up from this depth at 35 fathoms are in effect blown. So usually, when watching one of my films, you would see an awful lot of the fish going back again. Not these today. What doesn't go, got a knot there, what doesn't go in the freezer, small fish, what doesn't go in the freezer makes its way today to the fish market. And my guess is here that I've got a small Ling on board. But the bite was nicely decisive, so they're ready to come out and play. I've often thought that they all sit down there, thinking to themselves, oh good, here comes a charter boat. We get a crack now to catch a human. Who's going to bother with the young 14-year-old of no weight on the other side? Nah, I don't think so. Let's go for the fat, lumpy chap on the other side. Ah, feed me, feed me. I'll have you any moment now. Nice pout for Warren. Well, that's actually my first whiting of the year. And a very pleasant little sized fish. That one's definitely going to the pan. Bit greedy, 8/0 Mustad. Shows you they're not frightened by the size of the hook or by the size of the bait you're presenting to them. Good quality fish this year, Dave.
Yeah. Low belly.
Yeah. Nice fish. Solid piece of whiting. The bait is not too trashed. What I will check out is that the barb is still completely exposed to do the job it needs to do. And the elasticated cotton on the top has, of course, stopped it all bunching lower down on the hook. So I'm going to cheat a bit, and rather putting on a fresh one, which does actually go against the way I usually like to fish, I'll rehook that piece on because he hadn't killed it too much, and send that back down again and see if that can find us the ling that I'd like at this stage of the operation. How you doing, Ryan?
Right at the moment.
Rattle on. Has your dad lent you a reel here that's about 4 times older than you are?
Yep.
Yeah.
Going empty.
He kept all the modern tackle for himself. Walk closer in, and then you can lean on this and secure yourself with your legs, all right? Good stuff. All right, let's do a bit of pump and wind. Let's do a bit of classic angling. Lift, drop the rod and wind like hell to bring in the slack. Then you don't have to do the work, the tool will for you. Lift, drop it quickly and wind in the slack. Down, and lift, stop winding, lift the fish, drop quickly and wind in the slack. Feel that? Mm-hmm. You need to find that technique. When you've got that, you'll find your angling less effort. The big question is this fish or another human being's line?
Oh, great.
Eh? Keep your eyes forward, let's see what happens. It's a bit of both. Won't be long, Warren. Lift it up then, whiff it up and walk backwards. Here you go. Hey, Ling. Good stuff, main man, you're doing well. Can't do this bit. If I'm not standing up, I've had it, you know? The angler that sits is the angler that's over-relaxed.
Oh, not right.
He's waiting for a marlin, actually. The stresses and strains of this job are no greater than any other, but sometimes there are some moments as a so-called professional angler that give me really great pleasure. Now, during today's trip, I've noticed one angler particularly has been catching more fish, and nay, even bigger ones, than most of the rest of us. He is, of course, the very spawny Ryan Vaughan. But about a month or so ago, Ryan and his dad were out with me in Egypt, and he actually caught himself a Nile perch of 169 pounds. That makes him the angler on a Liamdale safari to catch the biggest Nile perch so far over the last couple of years. So it is with great pleasure that I would give this trophy to the young and upcoming future angler, Ryan Vaughan, with my pleasure. This is a gift from African Angler to you, my son. Don't forget to polish it regularly, all right? That's a good one. Well done, Ryan. And there is, of course, just one extra little thing. This is a Liamdale Award, which you can stick on the wall. Liamdale Award, Outstanding Fish, 1999, Nile Perch, 169 pounds, Lake Nasser, Egypt, presented to the young and future successful Ryan Vaughan. All right, mate. There's another one. For God's sake, don't drop it over the side. Time is merely an illusion. Lunchtime equally so, to quote Douglas Adams and Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It is, in fact, several hours since I last pointed my face down this camera. The ling went seriously off the boil, so it does mean we won't be steaming any of them tonight either. We've actually moved. The wind's playing havoc, the tide's starting to play havoc. We have an extremely skilled and very talented skipper who has successfully anchored us onto our last hope, somewhat desperate attempt, wreck of the day. So we're game on in terms of situation, but that doesn't mean that the fish are actually going to feed now that we're here. All the rigs and everything are exactly the same as they were before, with one added advantage. We've had radio information from divers who were 180 feet down a little while ago, who fled the wreck very pleasantly in awe with tales of the many conger eel that are running around down there at the moment, gagging to fill their faces on various bits of mackerel. But this is, unfortunately, fishing, and try as hard as we can, as best as we can, with all the bits and pieces that are even vaguely possible to make for a good angling day. We are, without a shadow of doubt, having what can loosely be called a struggle. Go on, my son, lift the rod, down with the rod and wind it in. Concentrate on trying to get that technique, so you always keep contact.
It's probably a very small one.
I wouldn't know the difference.
I say that, we've been waiting for an hour and a half for this.
Yeah.
You wouldn't know the difference, this is big or small.
Yeah.
Big Conger don't break it.
Kinder.
More to come, I just know it.
Yeah.
We're sat on top of it.
You're there,
Still
okay.
There. I was frightened.
Yeah.
That's the strap.
Yeah. It's your first Conger rider.
Is that a conger?
Yeah. Well, sort of.
It's a worm. It will be when it grows up.
Hey, okay.
It will be a Conger with some emergency lenses.
Bring her in for a quick look.
Put it back in.
That's it.
Well done, runner.
Nice one, rhino, eh? First conger eel on the new wreck. A fish somewhere around 12 pounds, maybe a little bit bigger. Do have a tendency to exaggerate fish sizes when it suits me. What you can't, of course, legislate for is size, and he had equal chance of that being 12 or 100. Somewhere behind me, someone else has got another one. How you doing, old timer? Yeah?
For an oldster.
I'll come round and have a look, but hopefully still live mine down there as well. How decisive?
You've got to be looking at about 40 pounds or so.
Okay. Gambling weight, eh? Before
I would
seeing.
imagine, yeah.
There's actually a string of pout holding hands.
Don't fall through that gap. I'll try not to, sir. Bit of plunge there. Go, where's me Liam Dale Award flat and cup?
Let's see it over the side first, eh? Let's see it over the side. I think you might have picked up a bit of my line as well, I'm afraid.
That's him.
Yeah, sign of a fish. Okay, well done, Rod. Squealy eely. Okay, conger eel over the side. You in over there, Jeff?
Go on in, Rhino.
Come on, father and son, man.
I'll race you to the top.
Don't rush me. Sorry.
What's the language, Rhino?
I have to, I know.
Don't swear in my film, you.
Oh, this is interesting. What?
Lift it! Lift it, Rhino, fast! Come on, lift it!
Get it in your butt then.
It's in.
Hold on to the rod.
It's got a good one, Rhino, so you make sure you get it, yeah?
Come on, Bonnies.
Lift. Go on, Rhino, lift it!
I'm trying to lift it. Bloody hell. Give me now, perch any day.
Lift, good. Drop the rod and wind in the slack. Lift. Good, man, you're coming away from the wreckage. Lift, good, wind it in. Drop the rod and wind in the slack. You're getting there, okay.
Conger off.
Hit the light yet? Gone mad.
It went mad, did it?
This is worth it.
Me too. I knew I had one as soon as I knew one was touching. You put your one.
Taking any line?
What size, Dave?
30 pounds, I would have thought. That's what they're supposed to do.
You could have swallowed it, made him edge up.
Keep that fish.
With a lull in the fishing, let's turn to less windy climes and head to the studio to look at the various ways of presenting mackerel baits to reef and wreck-based Ling and Conger. We've already covered the topic of what bait to use. Let's now look at the various methods of presentation. Firstly, the mackerel. There are lots of options that in the end boil down to personal choice, and this choice comes from experience. Firstly though, we'll start with the flapper. Take one whole mackerel and cut off the tail. This stops the bait spinning in the water, particularly as the presentation is lowered. Cut down either side of the backbone as if you were filleting the fish, but leave the sides on. Then take out the backbone. Pass the hook in through the mouth and out through the top of the hard crown on a mackerel's head, and there you have it, a flapper. To increase the flow of juices and up the scent value, you may choose an additional option that I apply, and that is small cuts down the sides of the bait. This makes some enticing tendrils that I believe Conger find appealing. Next we have a solid side of mackerel. Take a whole fish and again cut off the tail. Then remove a fillet totally from one side only. Pass the hook in through the mouth and out through the side of the bait fish, making sure the barb is well exposed. This lumpier presentation can be quite effective when the tide run has stopped or when bites are tentative, because it makes for a still bait in calm conditions. Finally, there's the head and a fillet presentation, usually used when bait is getting sparse. Don't throw anything away until the end of the session, by the way. Many's the time I've been grateful for a bit of backbone when the bait has gone too quickly. Take a head of mackerel and pass the hook again in through the mouth and out through the top. Take a fillet and hook it on below the head. This wavy presentation can be quite effective as an attractor. You can also cocktail the head with calamari if you choose, or use calamari with fillet, etc. This combination is good for attracting ling or cod if you have an interest in filling your freezer. Hopefully, these few basic methods of attaching baits will get you established as a boat angler, at which stage you can then look at crab, cuttle, garfish and anything else that takes your fancy or is recommended by the anglers in the area you are planning to fish.
And as is often the case with good British saltwater angling, the odds have now changed and we're having a bit of a conger bash. I've just brought in a fish round about the 25-pound mark, baiting up as fast as I can to get it back over. Warren needs to lift his rod just a little more, give Dave a chance with the gaff. Pleasant, healthy fish. Eddie's got one on at the back. Jeff's got a decent fish up the front. Fish on the surface back there, one on the deck. Good, this, isn't it, sometimes? How you doing, Jeff? We are having a serious belt around all of a sudden. There's about 150 pound of conger coming in the last 6 minutes. And at the moment, there's a sensible fish on one side and Warren's testicles are disappearing into his stomach just behind me on a much bigger one.
Problem over 25 or no? I'm out now. I'm out now.
It's out. Nothing there.
No, I've still got the fish.
You still got the fish?
Yeah, but he ain't big.
Okay. Well done. Saved the fish.
I think.
Saved the fish.
There you go for another run.
No, yeah.
Get him down there. See what's going on.
We reach the end of what has been an exhilarating day of windy charter boat fishing. Everyone will sleep well in their land-based beds tonight, with the cobwebs well and truly blown out of their systems. While we head back to our various jobs tomorrow with sunburnt ears and wind-burnt noses, Dave will of course be cleaning off the boat and preparing for the next collection of crazy anglers who seek the large species available to the rod and line boat anglers in the fine waters around our wonderful island domain. For me, it's been a bit disappointing in terms of the fish I've caught. I didn't get a pollock or a ling. I did have a few superb whiting, the biggest I've had for a while, so the kids will get a good tea. I also had 3 conger of about 25 to 30 pounds, but that was my lot today. I've resisted the urge to include footage of me being cleverer on other days and other programmes. But the other anglers had a good day. Noticeably Ryan, who was hotly pursued by Eddie and Roger in the numbers stakes. Jeff had the pleasure of watching his lad take on the conger and land them. My kids are still young. That's a future joy for me, and with 3 boys, I suspect we'll be taking to the sea on a regular basis. I hope you've enjoyed our efforts in this programme. You can best keep in touch and learn more about this fascinating genre of angling in the very best magazine available for sea anglers of all factions, Total Sea Fishing. I know I'm biased, because I write for it. With television angling on the increase, and my BBC series The Big Catch popping its head up in over 100 countries worldwide, there's a growing awareness and respect for the skills of the British angling community. We lead in technology and conservation, preservation and development. And for the angling viewers of the new millennium, there's a golden opportunity to learn from the mistakes made in the past and rebuild fish stocks and sport fishing for many generations to come.